Hey children, so I'm helping you get through your homework tonight. What we are doing is we're using the slope formula on a graph in order to find our slope. So I know a lot of you are wanting to just count the slope, but as I told you during the do now, that is not okay. I want you to practice using the slope formula, which means I want you to practice picking points from a line, writing down those points, labeling those points, plugging them into the formula, and doing the integer math to figure out the slope. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and use a red pen so you can see it against the blue. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for 2 points on this line. It doesn't matter which 2 points I use. If I simplify my slope, I will get the same answer. So if you don't like simplifying, you might want to pick 2 points that are the closest together. If you don't mind that and you just see the first 2 points you want to pick, that's great too. So I see this point here and I see this point here. So the first thing I want to do is write down what these points are. So this point here, well, my intercept is, my origin is here, so I go x, -1, -2, so I know x is -2, and then I look at the y, -1, -2, -3, so I know my y is -3. Okay. As for this point, I don't move left or right off of this y-axis, so I know that my x is actually 0 for this point. So 0, comma, and then for my y, I go down another time, so that's -2 for y. And at this point, I can label these x1, y1, x2, y2. The next part I want to do is I want to make sure that I write my formula down. My slope, m is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Remember, these are just the change in the y and the change in the x, respectively. So since I have y sub 2 and y sub 2 is -2, I'm going to plug in -2 there. Subtract. What am I subtracting? I'm subtracting y sub 1, which happens to be -3. So I'm going to put subtract -3. The subtract comes from the formula. The negative comes from the -3 in that point. And I do the same thing for my x values. My first x value is 0, so I put 0 minus, and my second x value was -2, so minus and -2. Here come those integer rules I was telling you about. These are subtraction problems with negative numbers, so I know I have to use keep, flip, change. So I'm going to keep my -2, change my subtraction to addition, and change my negative to a positive. On the bottom, I'm going to keep my 0, change my subtraction to addition, and change my negative to a positive. So now I have 2 negatives and 3 positives, which leaves me with 1 positive. On the bottom, I have 0 and 2 positives, which will leave me 2 positives. This means my slope is a positive 1/2. Okay, if I wanted to look at this the other way, the way we're used to, which is just drawing, I can see, oh, I go over 2 and up 1, so that's 1/2. Okay, let's take a look at problem 2, and then I'll let you get to it on your own. So problem 2, I'm going to do the exact same process. I first need to pick 2 points on the graph. Doesn't matter whether they're far or close together. If I simplify, it'll give me the same slope. Hopefully right now you're noticing or picking up on what kind of slope it should have. And if not, that's fine. I'm going to show you what kind of slope it should have. So I'm going to pick these 2 points and I'm going to write them down. So again, this is the origin, 0, 0. So if I'm moving to the left, x is -1, -2, -3. So I know x is -3. And if I'm moving down, y is -1. Y is -1. I can also label this x1, y1. Then I move on to the next point. I move in the positive direction 1, so x is 1. And then I move in the negative direction for y once, so I know y is -1. And I can label this x2, y2. Okay, I move on to the next part, writing down my formula. Yes, please write down your formula every time. By the time you get to your STAR test or you have to use it, you're going to be a pro. You're not even going to have to worry about it because you wrote it down so many times. You're not going to have to wonder whether it's right or not. Okay, and then I start plugging in. Y sub 2 was -1, so I write -1, subtract. Y sub 1 was also -1, so I put -1. Subtract for the formula, negative because the 1 is negative. On the bottom, I'm going to do +1 for x2 minus a -3. Again, I have this instance where I have subtraction, but I also have negative numbers, so I want to make sure I use my keep flip change. I keep my -1, I change my subtraction to addition, I change my negative to a positive, I do the exact same thing on the bottom, and then I do my math. Okay, so my math tells me -1 plus 1. Well, -1 plus 1 is 0. Okay, on the bottom I have 1 plus 3, which is 4. Okay, I know that it's okay to have 0 on top of my fraction. That just means that my answer is 0. Okay, please do not leave your answer like this. When you leave your answer like this, you are telling me you don't know what this equals. You do know what this equals. You know it equals 0, so please write that it equals 0. So my slope m is 0, and I'm done. Okay, you have 4 problems left to do on your own, which I'm more than sure you can do correctly. So please get those done, and I will see you in class tomorrow. Goodbye.